Let's continue learning about Kennedy's 1963 Texas visit, re-election campaign, assassination, and legacy.
I once watched a documentary on the Kennedy assassination produced in the UK, so it had a bit of an outside perspective on how the assassination shaped the United States. And one line stuck with me. The narrator said that Americans hadn't gotten over it. I felt that this was an astute observation. If you talk to anyone who was alive during the assassination and ask them about it, to this day, they usually convey the sense of shock and senselessness they felt when it happened. They usually can tell you exactly where they were and what they were doing when they found out that the president had been killed. And for many who were either too young to remember it or weren't born yet, the assassination remains an endlessly fascinating topic. Sometimes it's a bit of a macabre fascination. There are assassination buffs who've watched the footage of Kennedy being shot over and over again, trying to figure out just what happened that day. There are alleged autopsy photos of JFK that you can find in books or on a Google search, photos that are studied for evidence. Thousands of books, documentaries, and movies have been made telling us who killed Kennedy, whether it was, as the government said, Lee Harvey Oswald, or a broader conspiracy. There are questions that continue to perplex the American people. Why was Lee Harvey Oswald himself killed just 2 days after the assassination? Was there a second gunman on the grassy knoll? Kennedy died after serving as president for 2 years, 10 months, and 2 days. He was 46 years old, the shortest lifespan for any American president. His death cut short a presidency that was still in the making, with many goals and initiatives left undone. It would fall upon his successor, Lyndon B. Johnson, to see these goals accomplished. The trauma and unique circumstances of Kennedy's assassination would leave a deep imprint on the psyche of the American people. They remember Kennedy's thick Boston accent and his soaring eloquence. They remember his charisma and the glamour surrounding him and his family. They recall images of him and his beautiful wife, and him playing with his young children. But they also remember the darker side of the Kennedy years. They hear about the accusations against him and his family, that his father was a bootlegger, and that he stole the 1960 election. They remember the affairs. They picture Marilyn Monroe singing happy birthday to him on national television. They see books being published by women, even over half a century after his death, that reveal yet another one of Kennedy's extramarital affairs. They remember the scandals that rocked his family even after his death, that his brother Teddy drove his car off a road in Chappaquiddick, and while Teddy managed to get out of the car, left a young woman to drown. They remember the haunting images of JFK in Dallas with Jackie next to him in her pink suit, shaking hands with the crowds and riding in the motorcade. They've seen the footage of him getting shot. They remember the image of little John saluting his father's casket. These images, perhaps, are the biggest imprint Kennedy left in the collective memory of the American people. They are, perhaps, more vivid than anything Americans remember about other presidents, like Dwight Eisenhower, and even more recent ones like George H.W. Bush. Kennedy was one of the most popular presidents of all time. He still holds the highest approval average in Gallup polling at 70%. Compare that to Ronald Reagan's average at 53% and Bill Clinton's at 55%, both two-term presidents. And that popularity has lasted. When Gallup polled a sample of Americans in 2010 on their feelings towards recent presidents, Kennedy rated the highest with an 85% approval rating. Reagan came in second with 74%, while Kennedy's 1960 opponent, Richard Nixon, polled lowest at 29%. But you have to wonder how much of his popularity comes from what Kennedy actually did versus what he represented and what feelings he evoked in the American people. Part of it might have to do with the way history turned out after his death. His successor, Lyndon Johnson, achieved much of Kennedy's domestic goals, passing a tax cut and civil rights legislation, but he also escalated American involvement in Vietnam. The result was a stalemate, with tens of thousands of Americans dead, dividing Americans across the country. Soon, assassinations took the lives of Martin Luther King Jr. and Bobby Kennedy. Then Richard Nixon took office, who, despite his foreign policy successes, saw his presidency crumble due to Watergate. Both the war and Watergate would deeply erode the American people's trust in their government institutions and their leaders. The traumas of the 1960s and 70s, the upheavals, the assassinations, the scandals, all of these things led Americans to look back at what happened before with a sense of nostalgia. They remembered the days when Kennedy was in the White House. His assassination seemed to mark a turning point from an era of optimism to one of chaos and confusion. Kennedy obviously didn't have a chance to complete the things he started. The high hopes he inspired in 1960 were left unfulfilled. Whether he would have fulfilled them is a question that historians continue to debate. Kennedy's assassination robbed him of the chance to realize his vision, but it also shielded him from the possibility of failure and disappointment. There are many examples of leaders coming into office with great aspirations, but who leave office with a sense of unfulfilled promise, a sense that the hype didn't match the reality. Had Kennedy lived, would that have been the case? And if so, is his legacy actually enhanced by his violent death? On the evening of November 22, 1963, just hours after President Kennedy died, David Brinkley summed up that extraordinary and tragic day.
It has all been shocking, but perhaps one element in the shock was
To learn more about John F. Kennedy, check out The Presidency of John F. Kennedy by James Giglio, President Kennedy, Profile of Power by Richard Reeves, and Strategies of Containment by John Lewis Gaddis.
I'm Mark Vinette, and I hope you're enjoying the ride.